Welcome to an all-new episode of Interviews from Caracas. My name is Reagan, the Vignes. Now, the topic of regional integration has been on the table for a while, hence the creation of ALBA back in 2004. Now, today, to talk about ALBA is a professor of political economics. He's also the Deputy Director of International and Latin American Relations at Sapienza University in Italy. He has an all-new book. It's called L'Alba di una futura Umanità, pardon my Italian, and he's here to chat with us today. Professor Luciano, thank you so much for being here with us on Interviews from Caracas. My first question to you is, well, as I said, there's a lot happening in the region right now. Before we go into more specific topics, can you give us a brief description of the political and social landscape of Latin America?
There's a lot currently happening in Latin America, or as I call it, our Latin America, which is a concept resulting of these integration processes that have taken place in the region. I would say this new Latin American order has been in place for at least 15 years, because the progressive, participatory and democratic process that started 15 years ago that changed the region are American. Latin America endured 5 years of colonial oppression. There was also a period of strong tendency towards dictatorship, along with a strong U.S. presence in Latin America. In fact, the Cuban Revolution, despite all its contradictions and limitations, had the greatest resistance against the U.S. imperialism for the last 20 years. In the 90s, Commander Hugo Chavez conceived the Bolivarian idea of starting an integration process in the region, and following the ideas of Simón Bolívar and José Martí and Tupac Katari, he wanted to set the conditions for the merging of a new order in Latin America. President Hugo Chavez wasn't about limiting Venezuela's integration process, so he formed a major alliance with Cuba. In 2004, I was here in Caracas when the network of intellectuals, artists and social movements in defense of humanity was formed, which was consonant with the creation of the ALBA, the Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of Our America. The ALBA group transformed Latin America, our America. It started out as a commercial partnership between Cuba and Venezuela, but also as a strong political alliance. Another important event during those years was the victory of Evo Morales in 2006 presidential elections in Bolivia. Evo Morales is a dear friend of mine, and I have invited him several times to Italy for the Sapienza University of Rome, of which I am the Vice Chancellor and also the delegate for Latin American and the Caribbean affairs. He actually visited our university in 2007. Evo Morales' victory was of great importance for Latin America and the world because he was the first president to come from a rural population. He was a cocalero, activist, and part of the Rural Labor Union. So he was a president that would have the interests of the workers at the heart. That is the interest of 80% of the population of Bolivia. The Bolivian population was slaughtered by Europeans during colonialism. I sometimes feel ashamed of Europe. I might be an European, but I am not Eurocentric. I reject European imperialism and colonialism. I repudiate the Eurocentric way of thinking. The election of Rafael Correa in Ecuador and Daniel Ortega in Nicaragua was also very significant for Latin America. The ALBA has been an important tool for the integration process of the region. Nowadays, along with the ALBA, we have the Union of South American Nations, UNASUR, and the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States, CELAC. All these regional organizations include countries such as Brazil and Argentina that have democratic and progressive governments. Latin America has a new view of independence. The CELAC summits are an example of that. There, we can see more than 30 nations standing united against imperialism. Latin America is more united than ever and will stand firm against any attack to one of its nations. This represents a new integration phase in which the peoples of Latin America value and exercise their rights to self-determination.
And I guess all of this that you're talking about, these regional leaders who have come forward, who have appeared throughout the region, are all fighting for, as you said, regional integration and freedom from imperialism and colonialism, which, of course, led to the creation of ALBA back in 2004. And, of course, your book deals with this. It's called L'Alba de una futura humanidad, pardon my Spanish, or rather Italian. Tell us a bit about the creation of ALBA and what was its intention.
Yo pienso que no se puede hablar hoy de una nueva fase, de una nueva historia de la América Latina, de Caribe, sin no se va a considerar la fuerza de impacto político antes que económico dell'ALBA.
We wouldn't be talking of this new order, this new chapter in the history of Latin America and the Caribbean, if it weren't for the great political impact of the ALBA group. President Chavez and President Fidel invited me to Caracas in 2004. And at the time, to think we would be able to see this new political era seemed to be impossible. I think the ALBA's strength lies on its different socialist approach. It is the first time we see an organization that represents not only an alternative, but an alliance for the peoples. Initially, the name ALBA stood for the Bolivarian Alternative for the Peoples of Our America. But then, it was changed to the Bolivarian Alliance of the Peoples of Our America, because the organization would actually become a political, economic, commercial and monetary alliance. The organization has its own currency called sucre, and it created mechanisms such as Petrocaribe and Petrosur in order to have self-determination over Latin America's products. And there's also the Bank of ALBA. This idea of a Bolivarian organization comes from the Bolivar's ideas outlined in the Jamaica letter of a unified Latin America based on the principles of sovereignty and anti-colonialism, but also from the ideas of José Martí and descendants of the Aztec and Maya peoples like the leaders Tupac Amaru and Tupac Katari. Socialism was first introduced in Europe under a single model, which was the implemented by the Soviet Union in each of its nations. Unlike today's ALBA, that comprises different socialist models, Evo Morales' communitarian socialism is different from Korea's citizens' revolution, or Chavez's Bolivarian socialism in Venezuela, or Cuba's Marxian or Marxist socialism. Nowadays, the ALBA is an organization that has the support of all the Latin American countries, including Brazil or Argentina. President Dilma Rousseff and President Cristina Fernandez stand firm with Cuba in the Cuban Five cause, and also against the U.S. embargo. And they have also expressed their rejection towards the great economic war carried out by the U.S. against Venezuela. Also, I think an alliance with the Arab world and the different OPEC countries should be reinforced in order to put a stop to the conspiracy that is causing the falling of oil prices. Actually, Venezuela is currently subscribing new agreements with the people of Palestine, meaning that both ALBA and Venezuela play a key role in this process. I think that after the failure of the socialist model and the Eurocentric construct of the European left wing, which lost their sense of perspective after the fall of the Berlin Wall, European intellectuals, professors and activists across Europe saw Commander Chavez's strength, Fidel Castro's resistance, and the initiative of these organizations as a new hope for humanity. We just have to see the achievements of the ALBA in education, health and housing field here in Venezuela during the last 10 years. It certainly represents a new hope for humanity.
De deporte, de vivienda con la misiones grande de Chávez aquí en 10 años. 10 años de una futura humanidad.
Well, all that you said as it pertains to what ALBA hopes to achieve, there are still only, I believe, 11 countries that are associated with ALBA. And with other organizations in the region such as Mercosur and Caracas, surely those have prevented a faster growth of ALBA. And of course, with the death of Hugo Chavez, it has slowed down exactly what ALBA hoped to achieve. What is ALBA missing to help the region understand that we are stronger as one? What needs to be done to make all countries a part of ALBA?
I believe that, for the first time, we are acting in accordance with the historic thinking of Simón Bolívar, José Martí, and Ernesto Che Guevara, on the Great America, as Che Guevara called our continent. Why? Because, regardless of all differences, limitations and contradictions, there is an integration process that focuses attention on self-determination of the peoples. We have a model of representative democracy in Europe, the same in the United States. However, this model does not represent the needs of the people, mainly the workforce. Because, for example, if you have general elections and there is 30 or 40% turnout and you are elected with 51% of the vote, 80% of the population will not be represented by the government. The latest innovation within this process of self-determination of the peoples is a participatory democracy, as President Chavez called it, the protagonist democracy, a popular democracy. Under this model, people go to the polls, but decisions are taken in the communes, on the streets, the workplace. Today, we have Mercosur, the common market of the South. But the Mercosur we have today is completely different to what it was 10 years ago. Because now that Venezuela has a share, the social approach is taken into consideration. President Nicolás Maduro is facing an economic war, and he has taken a tough stance on this issue. But not only the economic war, but also corporate media campaigns against Venezuela and the Bolivarian government. Thus, teleSUR plays a key role not only for Latin America, but for the entire world. Let me give you an example. In Europe, if you want to get an alternative information, I have to tune in to teleSUR, because if I don't do it, I will only get one point of view of the news. You asked me what needs to be changed. Nothing needs to be changed. The fight for self-determination has to continue. The ALBA group has to be reinforced, as well as the integration process of Latin America. Also, they have to strengthen trade relations within Mercosur and to reinforce CELAC as well as UNASUR, because these integration mechanisms have to gain prominence worldwide. There should be a clear understanding of what the objective of imperialisms are. Not only the American empire, but also the European empire. We are facing a difficult situation in Europe. We are fighting not against Europe, but the European Union as an imperialist institution. We see the ALBA group in Latin America as an example of what could be a Mediterranean ALBA. We believe a new world order is possible, but it will only be possible if there is a strong opposition against the economic war. The American and European empire are scrambling, and this is thanks to the political integration process of the peoples of Latin America.
I understand now that there is a Mediterranean ALBA. Describe what this is.
Putting forward a Mediterranean ALBA group, some people may think this is nonsense, but I put forward this idea back in 2010, and we did it 5 years ago, together with Rita Martufi and Joaquin Arriola, and representative of the Studies Center of the Italian-based Confederation, the only Italian trade union affiliated to the World Federation of Trade Unions. It is thousands of workers. Many Europeans thought it was an utopia. But let me tell you, an utopia is not a bad thing. It gives you the strength you need to think of a change, and it is positive. You see the American empire trying to hinder the ALBA's progress and Nicolas Maduro's government. There is also the blockade on Cuba. At the same time, you see, in the European Union, antagonist movements, antagonist social movements. We wrote a book entitled Peaks Awakening. It seems to be a simple issue. Why this acronym? Well, it means Portugal, Italy, Greece, and Spain. Peaks. The southern European countries, the global south, will always be cast aside. Why? Because the European Union is an imperial institution under the leadership of Germany. And this German leadership is generating a disaster in the labor force, especially in the global south. We believe that, as Greece's Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras showed to the world, that we cannot deal with the EU because the European Union, mainly Germany and France, are shaping a global leadership with an economic race with the United States. That's the reason we have to have an alternative, one that is truly based on the needs of the peoples, that comes from the peoples and social movements, with solidarity. So they are at the core of the organization, not with nationalist and fascist ideas, as some Spanish, Greek, and Italian organizations think. The idea is to create a new currency, a Mediterranean sucre, an ALBA group in the Mediterranean with both African and European countries. Every day, you see that thousands of African brothers are being killed. We need to set a different organization, a political economic organization between northern African countries and southern European countries.
Your perspective is very interesting. I want to get your view on one specific instance, obviously, the US and Cuba normalizing relations now. And what is your perspective on this entire a process. The 50-year-old blockade is still on. What will it take to be removed? How do you see this ending?
As I was telling you, we are trying to put in place a Mediterranean ALBA group. It is because we believe in a different model. We believe the model they have in Venezuela and Cuba are very important. For example, in Italy, not only in the Italian-based confederation, part of the World Federation of Trade Unions, as well as several intellectuals and magazines such as the Nuestra America magazine and the Contraviano magazine, have a positive approach towards Cuba, both current and past Cuba. Cuba is paying a high price for its independence and self-determination and to be a socialist country. There have been 3,800 deaths by the CIA and Miami-based terrorist groups. There is the case of the Cuban Five. I met with Pope Benedict and Pope Francis to keep them informed of this humanitarian case. On December 17, 2004, many said that the blockade had come to an end, a blockade that is causing so much suffering to the Cuban people and Cuba's economic self-determination. When all the Cuban Five were released, many said it was the end. It is not as simple as that. This process will take a long time to come to a completion. I am glad that they have taken the first step, but we have to bear in mind that negotiations continue. Negotiations mean normalization. Cuba says that in order to be full normalization of relations, the negotiations have to be carried out on equal terms. They have to respect each other's sovereignty. And there should be equal conditions in negotiations. Secondly, there's the Guantanamo issue. It is shameful that the United States has been there for over 100 years. But Guantanamo is actually Cuban territory, territory of José Martí. It belongs to the Cuban people. A third condition is that Cuba must be given the opportunity to have a normal relation with every country of the world, and that the American diplomatic staff respects the autonomy and independence of Cuba. With regards to the blockade, I think this is a fundamental issue, and it will take time to be settled. There are still negotiations. This is just the beginning of a process. Of course, it is a positive step, which I see as a victory for the Cuban people, more than of the Cuban government. Because Cuba is a small country with 11 million inhabitants, with no oil, but with human talent, schools, universities, and an outstanding health system. They made the American empire to come to the negotiating table. What will transpire from all of this? Well, since it is the beginning of negotiations, they should address not just the topic of free investment, but full trade. And they should come clear and say that it is not an economic embargo, but a blockade. They have first to end the blockade so the normalization of relations is completed.
You know, I think I could actually sit down and listen to you for hours. You're a very insightful man, very intelligent, obviously. But we've run out of time, unfortunately. Thank you so much for being here, Senor Luciano. Now, where can we find your book, ALBA, L'Alba di una futura humanità? Where can we buy this book?
This book was released in Italy. This is actually the second edition. This material is part of the debate. We view it as a political manifesto of the Mediterranean ALBA. Now, we have talked with several Venezuelan intellectuals. A Spanish version is going to be released shortly for Latin America, and we hope to do the same in English.
Very good, thank you so much. Thanks again for coming, it was a great pleasure. Hopefully you can come back another time. A lot more we can actually talk about. We have been watching interviews from Caracas. My name is Reagan Vignes. We'll see you next time. Bye.